Hi, I'm Karen Comstock from Quiltricks Patterns. I'd like to show you how to do machine binding. What you'll need is a pair of scissors, a couple of pins, some binding, and the quilt you're going to do. Today I'm just going to bind a little genie, which is a little pocket wallet pattern, one of my patterns, but it will act the same as a quilt. The first thing we need to do is prepare our binding. Now I've used a 2 1/4 inch piece of binding here, folded it in half and pressed it all the way down. Then I took the top corner, folded it down, pressed it, and pressed again. Now I'm going to take this piece and cut off the seam allowance, so it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance approximately. And then we'll be ready to start. Because this is machine binding, we're sewing the binding onto the back side of the quilt. Here's the fold that we just made, and we're going to pin about 1 inch below the fold. And then we're going to start sewing right below where that pin is. In your bobbin, use a thread that matches the front side of your quilt. And then on the top thread, you use one that matches your binding. I'm, however, using white thread here, so you'll be able to see what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam, starting about 1 inch below the fold, as we mentioned, and I'm going to sew all the way to about 1/4 inch from the corner. Then I'm going to turn my work and sew off the edge. If you can see that, it's a nice place for a miter. We're going to clip our threads, fold the binding up, fold it straight back down again, and then we're going to start sewing again another 1/4 inch seam all the way across. We're going to sew our 1/4 inch here and repeat our mitered corner as we have on all 3 corners so far. We'll do another one on this corner here. Sew off the edge of the corner, clip our seam, fold the binding up, and fold it back down. Now we're going to come down the last stretch here, and we just tug our binding a little bit snug so we're not going to get any folds or ripples in it. And we're coming up to where we started again. Make sure this is pinned down nicely because we're going to sew right over it. And then when we get to this part where the fold is, we need to clip our end of our binding off right before we get there. We're nearing the end here. We've clipped our piece, and we're going to take that piece and fold it inside the folded edge. Then we're going to sew our 1/4 inch seam all the rest of the way down, making sure we catch that folded edge and go back to where we started. So we have the first section of our binding completed. A really important part of the whole process is ironing. You need to press your binding so that it lays flat, including the corners. We're ready to start binding the front of the quilt now. First thing we want to be concerned with is the mitered corner. In this case, it's facing that direction. So to reduce bulk, we want it to face the opposite direction on the front. So I'm going to pin the fold down just so that makes it easier. So then we take a stiletto or seam ripper and put the fold of the binding just so that it covers your stitching line from when you sewed it on the back. And you're going to start sewing so that it's about 1/16 of an inch inside the binding. Continue to just barely cover that seam line, and we're going to come up to the corner here, make sure the miter's in place. We'll come to the corner, we're going to pull our pin out and start sewing down the opposite side. And we'll continue all the way around. Now I'm going to take this out so you can see it. And there's white stitching all the way along here. On the back side, it's in the same space. So that's how you do machine binding. Just do a little practice and you'll get it.